All righty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Wednesday, October 12th, middle of the week, up on the Kansas game day on Saturday, the last game before the bye week, a much needed bye week for the Sooners. It seems like that the bye week couldn't come soon enough. So OU's got the Kansas Jayhawks coming to town, and we're going to be talking a little bit of that game. We're going to be talking maybe a little more about the OU Texas game, not a whole lot, just some more information's come out. We're going to be talking about potential recruits. Could some OU recruits flip? And then should Brent Venables take over more the defensive play calling or be more involved? And we're going to be talking recapping our bets at the end of the video as well. Between Jose and I, we didn't kill. It wasn't a great weekend, but we've had better and we've had worse. So before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're over 5,100 subscribers. If you're new here or if you've been here quite often, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out a lot. Like the video, comment on the video, and be sure to turn on the notification bell. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything is linked in the description below. And remember, when you like the video and you comment on the video, that helps us out a ton, and it spreads this video elsewhere on people's suggested videos, so we can continue to grow and get more like-minded people in here, or a few occasional trolls. That's always good too. So we'll get into it now. I think the first topic that's kind of come out, and we hadn't posted a video for a few days since we did an instant reaction video on Saturday, was the fact that it seemed like General Booty was slated to maybe start, probably play a significant amount of the OU Texas game, but Brent Venables came out and said, and other coaches have come out and said, basically he had a setback during pregame warmups and things like that. It seems like some sort of a medical situation or an allergy or something happened during the pregame warmups, and he ended up not being able to go. So, which is really interesting, because you would have thought, we were talking before we started recording, you would have thought, that would have been a topic of, Greg McElroy and, the other commentators to discuss that. There's nothing. And maybe that's just part of what they were doing. They were keeping the Dylan Gabriel deal under wraps for a very long time. And then this General Booty thing happened. Well, we're not going to tell anyone, keep them kind of guessing. So it all, at the end of the day, it just left Davis Bevel, and Nick Evers as the two quarterbacks available for OU this past Saturday. Obviously, we saw Davis Bevel for about 90% of the game. In the last 4 minutes, we saw Nick Evers. I don't know. I want to get your reaction. It just seems like this season can't get going at all. When it's bad, it gets worse, it seems like.
I mean, yeah. And you said it. They didn't talk about it with the commentators didn't mention it. And I think the Dylan Gabriel possibly playing kind of overshadowed anything that would happen on College game day. They talked about General Booty a little bit. Pat McAfee was having a blast with the name. He actually said on his show that he only picked Oklahoma because he loved the name General Booty so much. So took an L for us. I want to preface what I'm going to say with this. On Saturday's video, did I overreact a little bit when I said fire Jeff Levy? Probably. But outside of the fire Jeff Levy thing, I think my points were all of my points still stand. And I do believe they're valid. Brent Venables actually mentioned it in one of his press conferences. Jeff Levy should have, I think, looking back, hindsight's always 20/20. He should have made a change quicker at the quarterback position. You can't wait until the game is over to make that change and give Evers an opportunity to get game reps. I mean, halftime, even to start the fourth quarter, at least see if he can produce any offense and start getting some momentum and confidence in the wide receivers, the offensive line with their pass protection, and Evers himself. I think it was definitely a learning experience. Do I realistically think we should fire Jeff Levy? No. Should he definitely feel some pressure, though? 100%. You can't make those kind of personnel decisions and expect to not feel any pressure from Venables or the fan base because it's just inexcusable as the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma. It's not just some group of 5 program that is going to be okay with losing, especially in that fashion. Now, with General Booty, if he was supposed to be slated to be the starter, that definitely makes it harder on Levy and makes it so that his game plan has to change a lot on the fly. Like Brum said, we don't know if he was for sure going to start, but it does sound like he was going to play some significant role in the game. So it definitely probably took a lot of the offensive game plan that he had set for the week out the window. I would assume that the Wildcat stuff was in there, but it was more of a, if we really need a spark, this is something that we can fall back on rather than what they were going to rely on to move the ball. I mean, it does suck. You can't, it's not something you can control, right? And it seems like General Booty's fine. It was just something that held him back from the game. But now you got to look forward. And Teddy Lehman said it really well in the Oklahoma Breakdown podcast they did after the game. At this point, with a 3-3 year, halfway through the season where we stand, Oklahoma, is there a chance that they went out? Yeah, there's always a chance. It just doesn't seem very likely. You have to kind of start preparing for the future, meaning start playing some of the younger guys in the spots that you really need to. We saw Kip Lewis at the end of the game. It kind of surprised me because when we talked about it after Whittier, the report that Whittier was out for the season last week, we assumed Kobe McKenzie would be the freshman that would be given the opportunity first because from what Venables has said, he's more physically ready, just doesn't know the defense well enough. And Kip's biggest criticism or what was setting him back from getting on the field was his physical readiness, just didn't have enough strength. But he was given the nod because it seems like he knows the playbook better, which is great because now you can fall back on a guy if you absolutely need to, if you're Venables and Roof. And then Woody Washington, he did play some safety. Are you going to consider the possibility of moving him back there while Billy Bowman is out until after the bye week? Definitely something. CJ Colden, I think, earned some time on the field after last week, played well, did get a pick. Definitely not a great game. And again, my point still stand. I did overreact, but they have hopefully, and it sounds like Venables is acknowledging this, and he said it multiple times and everything he's done this week. They are not a good football team, and to me, I think it's good that he's acknowledging that. But he knows that there's a lot that they need that they can build on and get better. Now, and I wish someone in the press conferences would ask this. Will he take more responsibility with the defensive play calling? Because I still think that's why he was brought here, to fix the defense, make the defense what it used to be. And I don't know if it's the complexity of the defense that he's trying to run, or if Roof doesn't understand it, if the players don't understand it. There's something going on where it seems like Venables taking more of a hands-on approach to the play calling could alleviate some of it, or bringing Roof out of the press box and down to the field, and maybe having Bates switch with him, or having someone on the field switch with Ted Roof so that he can go down and kind of gauge how the players are doing more in a face-to-face scenario rather than over a phone or getting it secondhand from the coaches on the field. I think there's some value there, especially when you have the defense struggling so much right now in the last 3 games. But I guess we'll see what happens during the Kansas game. Somehow Oklahoma opened up as favorites. I really don't understand how, especially so big. I think we opened up as a touchdown favorite. I'm not sure if the line is still holding on at that, but hopefully it's a good game. And it seems like Jalen Daniels might not play this week. I don't know. Those reports have been weird all throughout the day today.
I think the line has shifted even more in favor of Oklahoma. It's like 8 or 9 points now, the last time I checked, which is hard for me to wrap my mind around. So talking about a bunch of different things. So yeah, I agree. The whole Jeff Levy deal, having General Booty, at one point, right before kickoff, when right before kickoff is, but I imagine within an hour or so before kickoff, he finds out that his potential starting quarterback is not available. Well, that's tough on anyone. I totally understand that. And, I agree. Hindsight's always 2020, but he should have made the switch sooner rather than 4 minutes left in the game when OU's down 49-0. I mean, come on, you're just giving them garbage time. And not that, switching them after the halftime being down 20 something points would have changed a whole lot. But we've seen a 21-point comeback. What happened if Nick Evers would have came in and lit it up? I'm not saying that that's what would have happened, but it at least would have given the team a little bit of juice. Like, oh, okay, we're going to go after this and try to win. I don't think anyone truly believed, as much as they might, as a teammate and friend, they all might like Davis Bevel, and I'm sure they do. But they probably just felt deep down there like this is just not it. And they also might have had in their mind that General Booty was supposed to be the starter. And then they're like, well, oh my gosh, now we're down to Bevel. What are we going to, I mean, they might have already started getting in their heads before the game even started. So I don't know. Obviously, nothing can be changed now. It is what it is. Levy definitely is going through some learning curves. And you got to also think about, and I don't think this is anything that we've talked about, is he was with Lane Kiffin for a couple of years. And obviously he was at UCF before, but Lane Kiffin gave him an opportunity at the biggest school at that time that he had an opportunity to coach at. And Oklahoma is even bigger than that. And I think Lane Kiffin was able to guide Levy on a lot of things because he's an offensive-minded head coach and kind of prevent him from making the mistakes before he was able to do that. Kind of put up some guardrails and some guidance of saying, hey, I've been doing this for 10, 20 years or whatever. Don't do that. This is why you do this. And this is what we're going to do. Well, here, Brent Venables obviously is a defensive-minded head coach, and he's acting as a CEO, and he's taking a hands-off approach because the offensive side is not his side of the ball, and that's why he hired Jeff Levy, and I totally understand that. So I think Jeff Levy is going through some personal growth and career he's learning right now about the intricacies of being the offensive coordinator at an Oklahoma and having full autonomy to do whatever he wants. And no one's going to be over his shoulder saying, you're not doing this. Because Brent Venables, I mean, while he knows football, that's not his job. So I think there's also some personal growth going on with Jeff Levy, and I think he will be better for it, and I think he'll be fine. The criticism on him, various play calls and, personnel and things like that, all that criticism is fair. And I would like to think that he would agree with everyone that has those grievances with him. And talking about Brent Venables and why he was hired here, I totally agree with you. He was hired here because he's a defensive-minded head coach, won multiple national titles with Clemson and obviously at Oklahoma. Defensive guy, put together top defenses year in and year out at OU and at Clemson, and he knows defense. And I think he's going through some personal growth and learning when to be hands-off and when to be more involved. I mean, he's only ever known to be a defensive coordinator and all in on the defense, and that's all he's ever had to worry about. Well, now he's got, special teams, offense, and recruiting, and obviously he recruited at Clemson, but there's just a different level as the head coach. So I think he hired a guy like Ted Roof that's been around for a very, very long time, might not be the best person for the job, but someone that's been around for a long time and can at least pick up some of the slack. And I think what he's learning right now is he knows that calling a defensive game is kind of an art. It's not really a science, and you have to have a feel for the game. And I don't think Ted Roof really has a feel per se. And he might not totally understand the defense as well as Brent Venables because it's his defense. So I think you'll see Brent Venables get more involved. I think he's going to need to be more involved. And I think he's going to be needing to potentially end up calling plays, or if it might not be Ted Roof, maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's a Todd Bates. Maybe it's a Brandon Hall. I don't know. Or Jay Valai. I mean, someone might be by next season calling the plays. That's not currently Ted Roof.
And excuse me, I think just kind of thinking about the coaching staff, right? And Venables, what he did before getting to Oklahoma as a head coach. I think Roof is being given the responsibility as the play caller because on the field you have a coach at every single position group. Venables will help out the linebackers. Bates helps out the interior. Chavis helps out the edge rushers, and so on. Ted Roof is kind of the extra linebacker coach that Venables has deemed knowledgeable enough about football, and I'm assuming they work very closely together with game planning and all that stuff. Where he trusts Roof to make the play calls. But I agree. I think that he at least needs to consider the possibility of doing the play calling and using Roof as his eyes in the sky to know what's happening and the adjustments that need to be made only for a year or two. I think it's the way that he's doing it, I think, is how you see a lot of really, really successful head coaches go on to the next step. Saban does it that way, doesn't really do much play calling. He's a CEO. Bill Belichick, at some points in his career, has been the CEO. And he's obviously the general manager, and that's professional football. But similar, you kind of just manage your coaches rather than having to worry about the side of the ball plus the entire team. I think what's going to be interesting after the season is how the staff, there's got to be some staff changes. And I don't think anyone should specifically get fired. If they do happen to be let go, it's unfortunate, but it's changes that coach deems to be necessary to improve the team. I think something that would be valuable, especially on the offensive side, is having a quarterback coach, because Levy was an offensive lineman. And I'm not by any ways saying that he doesn't know what he's doing, but having someone maybe more experienced, and a lot of people have brought up Cale Gundy on Twitter. That's probably not happening, but just someone that's experienced at the quarterback position to guide a Nick Evers or Dylan Gabriel, General Booty, Davis Bevel, just on basic mechanics, kind of working him through and trying to help them develop as a quarterback, maybe something valuable to Levy, because at this point it seems like Levy's having to do a lot of growing himself as an offensive coordinator, and it may be holding him back a little bit from being able to unlock the next level for some of these quarterbacks. Dylan Gabriel, I think, is more of a finished product. Dylan could still improve, but we're probably not going to see as big of an improvement in Dylan Gabriel as we will see in a Nick Evers over the next year or two, right? So hopefully that's something that the coaches and Venables are looking at in the makeup of the staff next season. This season, you got to roll with what you got. Definitely a lack of depth, and something that I really haven't thought has much merit in arguments that people are putting forward is that somehow this team isn't talented enough to win football games, which I think is a whole bunch of bullshit, because there's no way that you can convince me or probably yourselves that Oklahoma has less talent than a Kansas. And no offense, I know Kansas is doing really well, but Kansas also does not recruit at the level that Oklahoma has recruited ever. Oklahoma has talent. It's not coming together. And I think it's happening because some people are trying to find excuses for why there is the performances on the field over the last 3 weeks, kind of pushing the blame off to Lincoln Riley, which, again, feel how you want about Lincoln Riley. He's gone at this point. He's no longer part of this program. He's a moot point at this point in Oklahoma football, in my opinion. You have to roll with what you got. And Venables is a good enough coach to do so. I think there's just a lot of learning with the staff itself. Chavis is a first-time position coach. Todd Bates is the most experienced and most successful coach on the staff. If I'm, kind of rolling through the staff quickly, but Levy, first time he's kind of given the full reins of the offense by himself, because he has been working with Heupel and Kiffin in his last two stints. And then he worked with Art Briles, Baylor. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of growing both for the players and the staff. And it's just kind of a rough season this year, but there's definitely a chance Oklahoma wins another 3 games and get themselves bowl eligible, even 4. I genuinely do not think this season I don't think we're going to be completely defeated in conference play. I don't think it's
No.
going to be. We should be favorites every week, though. Like I said, I'm surprised we're favorites against Kansas, given how they've looked over the first 6 games. But it is what it is, and I think Oklahoma should definitely put on the show this week. I hope they do, at least, given that it's at home.
Yeah, and I do agree. I mean, I think they're going to be able to piece some things together, and they're going to be able to win a few games that maybe some people don't think they will. This team does look tired, and they look like that they've been through the ringer, and they have been. I mean, because I remember watching the first game of the season, and the commentators were talking about how physical and what I've from what I've read, how physical this fall practice and fall summer ball has been. They did like 20 something straight days, or as many as days in a row as they could, of contact. It's physical, it's a culture difference, and I think that kind of took a toll on the guys, because the depth isn't there, and it's very top heavy. The talent is very high at the very top of the roster, but maybe it's not, the second stringers are not quite there. And so they're being relied on heavily. So they're playing all summer, and going into fall camp. They're practicing, they're tackling, they're hitting before, for weeks before even playing the first game. And then they come in, and now they've played 6 straight weeks, going in their 7th straight game. And I think they're just exhausted. And they're mentally and physically exhausted, and there's not enough depth. And I think Brent Venables and the staff has just really kind of put them through the ringer. And I think that's something about changing the culture. Nick Saban did it to Alabama. Various other coaches going to new stops did that. I'm not saying that Venables will be the next Nick Saban, but it's a similar path that they're going down. And I think these guys are just running ragged at this point, and the bye week can't come soon enough. And I think they could end up winning this game. They should win this game. Obviously, Vegas thinks they should win this game. Gabriel will be back. There's talent. They just need to get into the bye week coming off a win, get some rest, and get some momentum. And I think, everyone thinking that OU's going to be 3-9 is absolutely insane. I will say here every week, that we're going through this, there's no way that they're going to be 3-9 or even 4-8. I see them winning another, couple games at least 5 wins on the season, if not 6. I think they can get to six wins. Some people probably don't agree. But talking about that Kansas game, there's going to be some recruits coming to town. Now, before we talk about who's coming to town, I want to talk about a tweet that came out, and it's not indicative of any specific school, but Hayes Fawcett, which I'm sure a lot of people watching this has an idea of who Hayes Fawcett is. He does a lot of edits for kids that commit or decommit to different schools on Twitter and Instagram and things like that. Well, Hayes Fawcett tweeted out this Tuesday that it's flip season, basically, with the eye emoji. And naturally, Sooner fans kind of started hitting the panic button on social media of like, oh my gosh, are they talking about us losing recruits? Is OU going to lose out on a Colton Vasek? Is OU going to lose out on a 5-star PJ DeBoer? Is OU going to lose out on Jackson Arnold? Naturally, that's what ends up happening. And obviously the rumors have been swirling about Colton Vasek, with him, being a Longhorn legacy, being at the game. Jose, you texted me after the Texas game, OU Texas game, that he's liking tweets about, staying home and going back to Texas and doing things like that. And I will say he did favorite Hayes Fawcett's tweet about flip season. But then also looking through, he favorited Anthony Evans' tweet this morning about him staying, all about Oklahoma. He also did a J.R. Sandlin and a bunch of other random Sooner fans tweeting at him about saying, stay here, you're needed in Sooner Nation. And I pose this question: could the flip season actually be not about Oklahoma at all? And maybe that Oklahoma could flip someone, because he's favoriting flip season. He's favoriting OU stuff. I know he's favored some Texas stuff, but there's a lot more OU stuff on there. Is there a scenario where it's actually OU might flip someone?
I think you're not off base there. I think it's definitely possible, and it's something that we've talked about for months now. Main guy being Peyton Bowen, other guy being his Geyer teammate, Jackson Arnold's teammate, and Ryan Yates. Oklahoma could definitely be benefiting from this flip season tweet. Do I think it's crazy that some people were freaking out about it potentially being Colton Vasek? No, it did seem like that game did at least rattle him in an immediate reaction, and very much like fans, like myself, maybe an overreaction to what happened in the game. A lot of recruits, especially, and it's the bigger names like Caden Green, Samuel Masigo have come out, Caleb Hicks, Dalen Smothers. They've come out on social media and said they're sticking with it. It's Dalen Smothers. It seems to have become the leader, the vocal leader on social media in this recruiting class, and saying trust Brent Venables. We're not going anywhere, which is awesome. I think that's great for the fans to realize that losing games doesn't mean you lose recruits, especially in year one of a coaching stint. You see teams all the time. I've brought it up for weeks. Look at the top 10 in recruiting, in the recruiting classes. Not all of those teams are having the best seasons ever. They're definitely, I would say like 4 or 5 are definitely having really, really good seasons. Obviously, Alabama, Tennessee's having really good seasons, and others. But just because you lose a game doesn't mean that automatically kids are jumping ship. Is it better to win games? Of course, and that's how you're going to get more players. But at this point, I think for the most part, kids that are committed are sticking to their commitments for the most part. Colton Vasek, that situation has become weird over the last few days. Yeah, he is still liking a lot of Oklahoma tweets. Yeah, he's still liking a lot of Longhorn stuff, but he's also liking Oregon stuff. I wish I would have probably looked more into his social media before the Texas game to see if that was a common trend with him just constantly liking tweets and social media stuff for the schools that became his 3 finalists before committing to Oklahoma. I didn't, but from what I've seen over the last few days, it seems like he just constantly likes things at the schools that he really enjoyed during his recruitment, including Oregon and Texas. Now, is he going to flip? I really think that the coaches have put such an emphasis on how they're recruiting, and don't commit here unless you feel 100% bought into the vision that we have for this program and that we've communicated to you. Vasek clearly bought into that vision that Venables and Bates and Chavis and Valai have communicated with him. I think it's just simply an overreaction to what happened. Texas is definitely not going to stop recruiting them, and nor would I expect them to. No school is going to stop recruiting a very talented player like Colton Vasek, but you kind of just got to wait and see. Don't just assume that kids are going to leave because you lose a game. Even in that fashion, as frustrating as it is as fans, these kids have a lot more knowledge of what's happening with the coaches, with the programs, than any of us as fans do. I would even venture to say, even as much, they know way more even than the insiders that we all love. They have constant communication with their coaches and with Coach Venables. If he flips, yeah, it sucks. Obviously, we do not want that to happen, but you can't control it. It's recruiting. Recruiting is not a science. It's not, one commitment and you're done. You got to wait till that piece of paper signed in December or February. But it doesn't seem like Oklahoma is going to lose any. And if it is, it's maybe one guy, and that seems like a very long maybe.
And I mean, I feel good about every single one of OU's commits. It feels different than what, in previous years with Lincoln Riley's, recruiting philosophy. It always felt like when the rumors started coming around about a potential flip, 9 times out of 10, they did flip to whatever school the rumor was in. This staff really has only lost out on a couple of recruitments, and it wasn't because of a flip. They obviously did lose one flip to Ashton Kozart, but I kind of feel like that was somewhat of a mutual parting of ways. And maybe, Kozart was just not feeling at home. And it is It just wasn't it. So I feel good overall about this class. And I posed the question about, could the flip season be beneficial to Oklahoma? And you brought up obviously Peyton Bowen and Ryan Yates. You picked up what I was laying down as far as what I was hinting at. And it seems like both those guys are really in favor of Oklahoma, while Oklahoma hasn't looked great. But year one as a coach, as a head coach that has a great reputation on the defensive side, you get the benefit of the doubt. It's I need my guys in before you can really judge me. And hey, look, there is a path to playing day one. You can come play at Oklahoma, play at the highest of levels, and you can go to the SEC and you can play for my defense that's been top 15, top 10 at Clemson for the past 10 years or whatever. And we're just going to do the same here. It's just, I don't have my guys here and you're one of my guys, and come play for me. And I think that potential is really enticing the kids. And, I'm going to be honest with you. If I'm 18 years old and I'm not from Oklahoma, whatever, and maybe I'm not an OU fan, but if you had the opportunity to go play at Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, or Texas, and you look, you're a defensive player and you look at Alabama and Georgia like great defenses, but I might have to sit for 2 or 3 years. And then you look at Texas, and Texas has been up and down. They're seem to have finally turned the table, but they lose one bad game and you feel like Steve Sarkisian could get fired. Not that I think he will or anything, but it just has that feeling. And then you look at Brent Venables, a highly reputable head coach, defensive coordinator, now head coach, going to a program that has a lot of potential to play deep, day one. I'd rather go play day one and then, be there for 2 or 3 years and go to the NFL. That's just me, though. I think kids are thinking the same way. I'd rather play day one if I could. You're muted.
100%. I think the day one thing is the biggest factor. With the schools you brought up, obviously it wouldn't be crazy for those kids to want to go to those powerhouses in Georgia and Alabama and Texas. Like you said, seems to be changing the narrative of what they have been over the last decade or so. But Venables, like right at this point, you hit it on the nail. Like you kind of got to take this year one for what it is. He can sell like, I need my guys. You guys are people that will help me turn this program into what it was back in its glory days. And even 10 years ago with Bob Stoops constantly competing in big time bowl games, playing in national championships, hopefully winning a national championship while you're around. And hopefully I think that the guys that are in the class are seeing that. And that's what Jackson Arnold specifically is probably also trying to communicate to his teammates in Peyton Bowen and Ryan Yates. Again, those are two guys we've talked about a lot over the last 2 or 3 months, but they are still interested in Oklahoma, no matter how much some of you guys really want. Seems like you really want recruits to decommit because Oklahoma is doing poorly. That's just not how it works. As long as the coach is doing his job and communicating with the players and, talking them, calming them down in some scenarios like Colton Vasek, recruiting isn't suffering right now. Would it happen in 2 or 3 years if this is the same case? 100%. But it's year one. Like some of these players understand, the players understand that clearly, and they're going to stick to it. They want to be the reason Oklahoma flips this around in the next 2 years. And I think that's awesome. I think that's the players that Venables wants, and hopefully Bowen and Yates join that ship soon.
For sure. So talking on another note, as far as recruiting goes, while OU might be struggling on the field this year, it is not totally dead. So this weekend, OU is going to be hosting a few commits on some official visits. Caden McDonald, 2023 4-star defensive lineman. We've talked about McDonald. He's from Georgia. It seems like the main competitor is Clemson. Imagine that, same type of player, same, fit in that scheme. It seems like it's going to be hard to get him out of Georgia or committing to Clemson, but OU is going to pull out all the stops. I know that Todd Bates has been recruiting him, and Todd Bates has ties to the state of Georgia. I wouldn't count Oklahoma out on this, but my hopes aren't extremely high, but they could potentially put the full court press on him and try to convince him to commit. And he's got an eventual commitment, I believe, at the end of the month. Correct me if I'm wrong.
October 31st.
So he's someone that would be great to add to this class. Another guy that's coming for an official this weekend is Cecilia Kana, a 2023 4-star edge player. 247 has him the number 4 edge player in the class, number 34 overall. Their composite has him a little bit lower at 89 overall. He's from Utah, extremely athletic, and we've talked to Parker Thune, and he's basically in Drum have basically labeled him as Brent Venables, like his guy, in the class that he's putting the full court press on. So he's coming to town. He's visited Texas officially. He's visited LSU last weekend. He's going to visit Oklahoma this weekend, and he's got one scheduled for Texas A&M beginning of November. So he's a big time recruit, and it seems like Drum and Thune are still extremely confident in OU's chances, even with this season unfolding. It seems like kids are still really interested. And then I believe that Derek LeBlanc is coming as well. 2023 4-star defensive lineman, current Sooner commit, is coming this weekend. And I'm sure there's going to be other guys. I don't know if Jackson Arnold's going to be there. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure there's going to be a handful of guys that are going to show up unofficially and just come hang out for the weekend. And hopefully it's Bowen and Yates, but I have no idea. But so a couple official visitors that OU's going to be hosting, and I would love to add Akana and McDonald to this class. I do feel better about Akana than I do McDonald, but that's, you never know whenever you get them on campus.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. McDonald, the biggest reason I have hope, is a better way of saying it, is we are the last official visit he has lined up before his commitment 16 days later. I think that's big. That's big for Oklahoma. I do agree with you. It seems like it is going to be tough to get him out of that area of the country, but not impossible. Not when we have Todd Bates on our side. I think Bates is, again, the biggest weapon that we have in recruiting right now, especially with the defensive line. Yeah, has he lost a couple? And some of you are probably chatting about it right now in the live chat or in the comment section, saying that he's really not that good at recruiting. Oh, that's just recency bias, because if you look at the class, he is pretty damn good at recruiting. You have a fringe top 100 player in Derek LeBlanc. He helped with the PJ Adebawore. He got Grayson Halton in the last cycle. He helped with our Mason Thomas. Like, he's very good at recruiting. Caden McDonald, we have a chance. Might be long, but it's possible. Cecilia Kana, that's the one that is probably the one that a lot of fans and insiders are really intrigued about, because I don't believe he's visited Oklahoma yet. I know that Venables has had communication with him. Like you said, when we talked with Parker about it a few months back, he mentioned that this was like the guy Venables has eyed down as his guy and his target for this cycle, very much like a Jaron Kanik in the last cycle. So usually the way that Parker Thune put it, and I'm paraphrasing here, is when Venables targets someone, he gets that guy in his recruiting class. So that's why we all feel so confident about it. I think it's fair to say Texas definitely a big player for his commitment, given that his sister goes to Texas right now as a volleyball player, I believe. So this isn't a commitment or a recruitment that is going to be easy by any means, but you have to feel good about it when your head coach is the guy that's communicating with the recruit the most, as I want you here on my program. So that hopefully the visits go well, and hopefully Oklahoma wins, because after last week, you can't have two bad showings in front of a lot of recruits. And these are two recruits that Oklahoma would definitely need in the future once we have some of these guys leave Oklahoma through graduation, going to the NFL. And obviously the transfer portal is always an option for players. So having these very talented players is never a bad thing.
Never a bad thing. The more talent you can have on a roster, you take it. So, I'm sure there's going to be more visitors coming up this weekend. We'll probably try to do an update on Friday's video, but that's basically all we know as of right now who's going to be showing up. So the last section of the video, we'll be talking and recapping our bets. Since we did an instant reaction video on Saturday, we didn't necessarily post a video on Monday. So we'll go through the bets. So I'll just start off going through mine. I was 20-16 going into the weekend, or into this coming up, or this past weekend, excuse me, 20-16 coming in. And I am now 23-19. I went 3-3 on the weekend. My 3 losses: Arkansas, Mississippi State. I took Arkansas plus 9.5. That blew up in my face. Obviously, the travesty of a game, Oklahoma, Texas. I took OU plus 9.5. Not even close. And then I took Utah minus 3.5 against UCLA. And maybe the Fighting Chip Kellys are not too bad. UCLA is not looking too shabby. They're looking scrappy. I kind of like the fact that Utah ended up losing, because now Utah gets to play USC this weekend, bouncing off of a loss, being at home. They could really get up for this game, so that might help. My 3 wins: TCU, I took them minus 6.5 against Kansas. And then Michigan, Indiana, I took Indiana plus 22.5. That became a sweat at the end of the game, but they were able to hold on, and that score looks a lot worse than it actually was. And then Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, I took OSU minus 9, and they ended up covering that. So 23-19 on the season. What about you, Jose?
So going into last weekend, I was 22-19. After this weekend, not a great weekend. I am 24-23, and Brum and I agreed that I have a push. So I'm 24-23-1. I have a tie. My tie was Kansas. I got them. I know that Brum said he got them at 6.5. When I saw the line, it was at 7, and that's where I locked in my pick for the weekend. To be honest, we weren't too sure if that would count as a loss or a push. So he kind of gave it to me there as a push. Lost the Oklahoma bet, clearly. Arkansas versus Michigan. I had the over of 57.5. Or sorry, Mississippi State. Arkansas, Mississippi State. I had the over of 57.5. Those dickheads only scored 57. No one could get an extra point in to get us at 58. The trusted and constantly will be bet on every week, Iowa under. I think the point total was like 30 something. It was 9-6 at the end of that game. So always bet the Iowa under, even if they cover it sometimes. Seems like they will never score points. Michigan at Indiana, I had the over of that. Total was 58.5. I think they only scored like 40 something. Was a total at the end of the game. My other win outside of the Iowa under was Tennessee minus 2.5. That Tennessee team looks very good, and that's going to be a good game versus Alabama at Rocky Top, I believe. So that's definitely a game I'll be tuning into this weekend. And then I also had the over for that. Unfortunately, I gave LSU and Brian Kelly maybe a little bit too much credit for this one, or maybe I didn't give Tennessee defense enough credit. Either way, it was under. The point total was 64.5, and they did not get close to that.
Nice. Hey, at the end of the day, we're both above 500. So That's all you can ask for.
Even if you guys in the comments want to give me a loss, I'm at 500. Still doing well, probably making money if I sprinkled the money in the correct places.
In the correct places, yeah. So I think that's all I've got. Do you want to do the end of video challenge?
Sure. Today's end of video challenge. Let's just go with I know in the last one it was an overreaction, and probably some of you overreacted. Some days removed, do you think Oklahoma can win a couple games, and which games would they be? I think Oklahoma's got a good chance of winning 2 or 3 more games, probably this weekend, Iowa State, and maybe Baylor. I think Baylor just
Texas Tech.
Texas Tech, because it's at away, is the only reason that's not the one I went to. I think Baylor, just because Chapin isn't like the most mobile quarterback, and that's been the kryptonite so far. So those are the 3 games I'll pick where Oklahoma has the most likely chance of winning.
All right. I'm going to say, obviously, Kansas, Iowa State, and I'm going to say Tech. Baylor, I could see Baylor as well. That's why I think OU could be a 7-win team, because I think they could win that Baylor game as well. I'd like to see overall just this team win this game, go into the bye week, and hopefully build some momentum for the last few games, maybe win a handful of them and really get momentum into the bowl game and start momentum into the 2023 season. So something we'll be keeping an eye on. And if you've made it this far, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, do the end of video challenge. Remember, when you comment and you like on the video, it helps us out a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And we will catch you guys on Friday.